Welcome back to the Retire as You Desire show. Bill Bloom here, and today we have a special guest. His name is Kent Webster, and he works in cybersecurity. And all throughout today's episode, we're going to be talking about ways to help mitigate and stave off some of these threats that are coming to your accounts online. So, Mr. Webster, thank you so much for being a guest on today's TV show.
You're welcome, Bill. Thank you for having me. Yes, so I'm a cybersecurity professional. I have 10 years working in the space. I've been a lifelong techie as well. So
That's true.
Technology's been in my life the entire time. And it wasn't until I became a consultant in the space that I really got deep into cybersecurity and now work for a Fortune 500 company protecting them from cyber attacks.
Now, these attacks can come from anywhere.
That's correct.
I mean,
and I think, so yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions about it. I think a lot of people think that a cyber criminal today is still somebody who's sitting in their basement, acting alone, and doesn't have a lot of sophistication. And that is as far from the truth as possible.
Really? People aren't sitting in their parents' basements and just trying to...
Well, so in places usually outside the reach of European and US law, there are literally companies, people that have set up nice offices. They look like call centers with 200, 300, 400 people, and their jobs all day, every day are to scam people out of their money.
Really?
Yes. There are numerous instances in, places in the world where these companies are set up. They're extremely profitable. Right now, it's estimated that these companies as a whole make about $1.5 trillion annually.
That's big money.
Huge money. And where they're based out of, they usually are some of the highest paying jobs that people that are literate, that can speak English or speak a European language, are tech savvy. It's some of the highest paying jobs that these people can get. And they're okay, looking other way on their morals, or they come from a country that doesn't have a shared morality that we would, enjoy here in the United States. They're coming from that perspective, where they find out ways that it's okay to have this great job that gives them a good life, but at the same time, it's based on stealing from people inside of, America and European and Europe. The job is based on stealing from Americans and Europeans and other, high net worth individuals around the world.
Oh, that's fascinating. Over $1 trillion of revenue. It's crazy. I mean, is anyone being targeted? Who's really being targeted these days from these threats?
Well, everybody's being targeted. You don't need to have a lot of money to be a target for these people. You don't need to be a non-technical person. You can't, myself, actually last week, and I kid you not, I got texted from a random number last week. It literally said, Kent, ? Now, I have 2 sons. They're playing sports right now. We're starting to get to know all the parents on the teams. Normally, I would not respond. I get a weird text like that from a number I don't understand or I don't know,
right? And
they're not in my phone, and I haven't put them in my contacts. I don't respond to that. But I got this text message, and they had my name, and I was like, all right, maybe it's somebody I know, maybe it's not. Let's find out. And I responded back with the least amount of information possible. I said, hi. Yes, what's up? That's all I said. I didn't confirm that I am Kent. I didn't give them a location. I didn't ask them a question.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't, because it sounds weird, but asking a question gives them something to come back with to lead you on.
Right.
So instead, I got back was probably their default second text back, which is, hi, this is Laura. Are you back from Florida? Hey, how did that go? Hope you're doing well. I got something along those lines.
Yeah.
And I'm going, okay, I don't think I've met a Laura recently. I might not remember everybody in my kids' teams, but I don't remember meeting a Laura. I may have been in Florida in the last 6 months, but I haven't really communicated that to anybody or that who I think is Laura.
Yeah, because you're not on social media. You're very private.
Yeah, I am relatively private. I'm also trying to think of who I've spoken to in my life at the moment that I might have shared this information with. And it's not lining up. And once I'm there where I'm like, this doesn't seem right, this seems weird, I'm cutting it off. So I'm an Apple user. I can delete and report as spam. And I did that immediately after getting that text message.
Does that help?
It does, actually. It does. Because even though attackers can what are called spoof, they can basically Google or tell iMessage or tell any kind of provider that, hey, I'm emailing you from this email, even though they're not, or I'm texting you from this phone number, but I'm actually not. There's ways they can what's called spoof it or pretend to be a different number. So it is important to report that, because that's going back to the authority, to the organizations that manage those things, and letting them know that this person is using this number and it's not a legitimate number.
Wow.
So it's important to do those things. It's called reporting spamware. You want to be doing that. Okay, so going back to my text message though. So I'm going to immediately, block that. And I'm blocking it too because if it is somebody I know in my life, I much rather take the embarrassment of them bumping into me at the next game and being like, "Hey, I texted you. What happened?"
Yep.
"Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was suspicious." And I will have that conversation with somebody's face to face.
Easier to do that.
It's much easier. Now, if I texted them back, there's probably two ways it would have gone. The first would have been Laura would have tried to convince me that she was somebody. She would have asked me some questions. She would have figured out who I know who's a Laura and started role playing as that person.
Okay.
And she might be trying to get information out of me about like where I live, information she can use to go to, or information she can use to figure out who I bank with, who my financial institutions are, to go to those sites, start trying my username, start trying my passwords, getting those questions, right? We've all had those random questions and we don't think those answers mean a lot, but those answers actually mean something. You want to make sure that it's a secret. It's not something that can be figured out about you, because if she can use the information from the conversation she's having with me to fill in those things, suddenly she has access to my checking account. Wow. Suddenly she has access to my stock account. Suddenly she has access to my email, which is where she can reset all of my passwords and user accounts for all my financial institutions. So that's one way it could have gone. Wow. The other way that it could go is, oh, I guess I don't know you, but we're having this nice conversation, and they can talk to you for weeks, months. They can have a back and forth conversation where they're building a relationship with you. And at the end of that relationship, they make an ask of, hey, here's this crypto coin. Here's this stock. Here's this financial company. Here's this whatever. Right. Go to it. Please use it. Put your money into it. And and people unfortunately fall for it all the time. There's a lot of people that get, and it's a scam that's as old as time. If I'm a big film buff, it's like The Sting. It's a confidence scam. They're coming to you. They're saying, look at this investment. This casino is going to pay out. Come in, drop $1,000, invest $1,000, invest $10,000, invest $250,000 in this thing. It'll pay you back. Wow. And then poof, the rug is pulled and you're gone. And that's where the term rug pull comes from, is like, really? You think you're in a great spot. You think you're doing fine. Pull the rug from you. They knock you on your back and you're done. They're gone. They're gone with the rug. They're gone with your money. They're gone with everything around you that was part of that confidence scam.
Because what happens after they get your information or they get into your bank accounts? Like there's no recourse for that? Like what have you seen on your side of the table on the security side?
Well, so there can be. And again, it depends on the kind of attack. So before we go there, if I may, there's two kinds of attacks, which is one that is around trying to get technical control of your accounts, of the things you use to manage your money, to control your money, to tell your money where it needs to go. The other one is, like I said, this confidence scam. Mm-hmm. In our world, it's known as phishing or spear phishing. Yes. Or there's another horrible term for it, but another one that's now out there called pig butchering. Again, it sounds way worse than it is. It comes from thinking of like fattening up a hog. Basically you have a farm animal. You're feeding them. You're fattening them up. You're setting them up to take more and more money from them, and then at some point they pull the trigger and they get not just a few thousand out of you. They get tens of thousands out of you. And those are the confidence scams that go on for months or years. And unfortunately, some people fall for it more than once. They put one money in. And then they have such a relationship with the scammer that they put in a second time, they put in a third time, they put in a fourth time.
Oh my God.
And I guarantee you every time it's for more money. So it's important and it's tough. I'm not blaming those people that fall for that. We all, it's possible for anybody to fall for a scam like this.
Mhm.
I think what is valuable though is if you're a friend or if you're a significant other or if you're somebody to know that this, if you learn this thing is going on, to
Share
not
it.
judge the person.
Ooh.
Do not judge the person. Instead, ask questions. Try and say, is this legitimate? Does this seem right? Try and find media and push media their way that says, hold on, this sounds like this is like this thing. This could be going wrong. I mean, especially with social media today and the easy ways for people to communicate with people, the number of old style scams that are coming back, scams that kind of have fallen by the wayside, that are all around confidence, kind of went away, but now they're all back because it's much easier to make that connection with somebody. So that's what you need to be aware of. And it goes back to they're legitimately these companies. They operate as companies. They have payroll. They are, blessed by their local, by their local government to operate, and they are truly just out there scamming people out of their money.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Well, stay tuned for the next segment. We're going to go deeper into cybersecurity, what to look for, what to look out for, and what to really avoid. Stick with us on the Retire As You Desire show. $100 million.
$100 million. This bank got taken for over $100 million. But this individual who had the decision-making ability to transfer money got brought onto a Zoom call, a 30-minute Zoom call. Turns out everybody on the call on video was an AI-generated person.
No way.
Yes. And so they're giving this information. They're giving all this background. They're giving all this context. This was a very long time coming.
Welcome back to the Retire As You Desire show. And today's episode is all about cybersecurity threats and how to protect yourself against them. We have Kent Webster with us today. And I want to know, Kent, besides from who's being targeted, what do these attacks actually look like?
Well, so we talked about confidence attacks, right? Yeah. Where somebody's trying to reach out to you and build a relationship with you, and most likely you don't know who they are. And so, talking about how you can protect yourself from those things is first, I really only make friends with people you can meet in person. In today's world, you really have to be skeptical about anybody who is trying to become your friend who's online. And I'm not saying don't do it. You can do it, but just be skeptical of them. And you might need to do some weird things to make sure they're a legitimate person, a legitimate friend of yours, as opposed to somebody potentially scamming you. So, for example, if you're meeting somebody through, online, you start talking, you're playing games together, or you're in a chat room, or you're part of a message board or a group, and they want to start taking stuff online with you, or start taking stuff off of that medium with you, ask for a video call. 99% of the time, a scammer will not set up a video call with you because they have put some sort of persona in front of you that looks like you, that's familiar to you, and most likely they can't fit it. They can't match it.
It's fake.
It's fake. Yeah. Exactly. So they can't do that. So any kind of thing that's trying to verify their identity of who they are, that, they've shared you a picture, they show up on a video call as somebody completely different, well, then something's weird.
Totally.
So, but with that said, best practice is meet people in person, trade contact information in person with them, put it in your phone right away, make sure you have their number and their name so that when they call you, you know who that is. Do not pick up phone calls from numbers you don't know. Do not pick up, do not respond to text messages from numbers you don't know. Treat them all, anything that comes in that way, be extremely skeptical of.
So Ken, if I get a random phone call coming in, and it happens to me all the time because I have wholesalers and I have people that I work with and new clients and new introductions, which I'm very grateful for from our clients. We get them quite often. But what should I be looking out for and everyone else on the show?
I understand. So not everybody can be as, cutthroat as I've just proposed. You do, part of your business, you have to pick up numbers you don't realize. I think what I would say is have some skepticism when you start that conversation.
Okay.
Really be aware. Don't ball immediately and trust the person on the other end of the phone.
Good point.
Try and understand and build their credentials and their bona fides in your mind about who they are, how they're contacting you, why they're contacting you. And the other thing is, if you get to the point where you're like, I think this is a scam, tell them. Actually be like, you know what? I think you're scamming me. And see that reaction and then have no problem hanging up. Because you know what? If it's a legitimate like connection, if it's somebody actually reaching out to you and you're like, it's always better to apologize after the fact, to be like, you know, I'm sorry I cut you off. I'm sorry the conversation got weird. I've been scammed. I was just hypersensitive that day. And you know what? You found a different way to contact me and a different way to make this legitimate thing happen.
Right.
Cool. Great. Let's make it happen. I'm so sorry that happened that way. But just understand, like, that's kind of the world. And I think, you know, having a burned relationship or having an awkward moment, I think is way less expensive to you than potentially getting suckered into, you know, some deal of the century that ends up scamming you for a few $1,000s.
Oh, totally. Because if you're going to be dealing with people who you're going to see again, or like you had mentioned about your kids' sports teams and all the different parents, things will happen and that's just part of life. But you're getting these phone calls and text messages. It happens to my wife and I all the time where they get, where we will get a text that'll say, hello. You get these weird random text messages and I just try and avoid them. Should we delete them and block them right away?
Maybe not right away. Like, again, if you're in a situation where you have to figure out if this is legitimate or not, you're going to have to spend the time to make sure it's legitimate, but it is important to report it. So like Apple has a feature where you can report it as junk. That's important to do because that's telling Apple that somebody is spoofing this number.
Yep.
They can, they have the records on the back end. They can see how many text messages are going out from that number to how many different people. And if they start seeing a flood of them, they can lock it down and shut it down. Brilliant. Now, unfortunately, the scammers, you know, there's the people that are frontline trying to scam individual people. You have people that are one step away trying to figure out how do I get around all the defenses that just got put up. What, you know, I had a scam set up. It was running. Something came and blocked it, or, you know, blocked my number. They have the infrastructure to set those up. So unfortunately, just blocking that one number doesn't mean you're protected. They're gonna create a new email. They're gonna create a new phone number and come back after you potentially. So. But it's a way to stop it in the moment.
Okay, emails. You said something very important there. I want to really touch base on this. Emails are such a gateway into your personal information. What are some ways where these hackers and scammers are trying to get into your email or trying to get you to click these links? Like, and what do some of these emails look like from either a corporation, a financial institution? What have you seen on your side of the table in the industry?
I mean, again, you got to be relatively skeptical of emails that come to you with a link to click. Right? Emails are just pictures and words, and it's very easy for somebody to copy that and send that from a nefarious site as a nefarious actor to you with the wrong link. So you need to be aware. You need to make sure that first, the email looks legitimate. It's always important if you get a weird email from a company or financial institution or something you have a relationship with, well, then you need to check that email. You need to make sure that email looks legitimate. It's not at Yahoo, at Gmail, at AOL, or whatever. It's actually
at institution.com.
Yeah, it's from, the at institution.com email address. You need to make sure the beginning of it looks legitimate, like customer service or something. If you see a bunch of random letters and numbers, it's not most likely correct. The other thing is, even if it potentially is legitimate and it does meet all those things and you still don't really trust it, don't click the link.
Agreed.
Go to their website. So like if you use a bank, don't click the link that takes you to don't trust the link to take you to the right website. Go to open a new window, open your own address bar and put in your bank's website and log in that way, because there are attacks out there where they send you that link takes you to a page. It's not your financial institution page. It's somebody else's page. It looks exactly the same. Again, a website's nothing but pictures.
Really?
Yeah. And so they can duplicate how that page looks, give you that login. You put your login into their page. Guess what?
They have your info.
They have your login. They can go into your account and clean it out.
So that's how that works.
That is how that works.
Wow.
So that's the other part, the technical attacks. So you as a consumer, you need to make sure you're not doing something like that gives away your information. And I guess going back to text messages, right? We get links via text messages. If you get something from a bank like fraud alert, you're doing whatever, don't click the link and take it, or click the phone number that's in the link. Like, physically pull out your credit card for that financial institution, call the number on the back of your credit card.
Oh, wow.
Because you can trust the physical thing on your card. You might not be able to trust the link they send you.
That's so true. And if it's a fraud aspect, they're going to say text 1 or 9 or yes or no, like one of those scenarios where they're going to get that reassurance if you made that purchase or not, right? That happens
potentially.
A lot,
so
potentially, instead of a link.
Yeah. So we need to talk about all the tools that organizations have to protect you, because sometimes a tool from a bank that's telling you of fraud might seem sketchy or might seem weird, but it's a legitimate like communication aspect to you, letting you know that this occurred. And that's where if you don't trust the links, you don't trust the information they're providing you to talk back to them, you provide from your previous experience with that financial institution how you contact them. So you go to their site, you type in www.bank.com, or you pull out your credit card and you call the number on the back of their credit card and you talk that. If you can do that, it's gonna be trustful, right? Because you're making the action to communicate with them. You can trust the information that you've used in years past to communicate with your bank. That's one way to make sure you don't get taken advantage of by something that's nefarious. And if it turns out to be legitimate, guess what? You legitimately connected into that financial institution and created that connection, started that communication contact, and they will make you aware. All these banks, all of them have call centers with interconnected information. You're not going to get somebody who has no idea what you're talking about.
That's very true.
They're either going to be able to answer it or say, hold on, let me put you in contact with the right department to talk to us about this.
And we have that same thing when we get emails from clients saying, let's do this bank account or let's withdraw this amount of money.
Oh my God. Transferring money? Yes.
Is a big deal. We're going to say that for the next segment because we really need to go into that. But we always call our clients. We never trust that email. If someone says, I would like to have $15,000 put into my bank account, we always call and confirm. Always.
Absolutely.
Because you just don't know where the email is coming from, anything like that. We just have a rule for our office that we have to call the client. We have a ton of training on this too, because it happens all the time. The last thing you want to do is send money to a place that you don't know.
Yeah, so let me share one story quickly with you.
Yes, please.
So it came out early this year. There was a bank in Hong Kong, and this is what technology is only going to make it harder to differentiate what is an attack and what isn't. But unfortunately, somebody who was in a position to make a call to transfer over $100 million got brought onto a Zoom call.
$100 million.
$100 million. Oof. This bank got taken for over $100 million. But this individual who had the decision-making ability to transfer money got brought onto a Zoom call, a 30-minute Zoom call. Turns out everybody on the call on video was an AI-generated person.
No way.
Yes. And so they're giving this information, they're giving all this background, they're giving all this context. This was a very long time coming. So if you can initiate contact, that's a great way to protect yourself from being, taken advantage of and getting your information taken from you through something that's pretending to be something else.
Well, stick with us. We're going to have a ton more great information on cybersecurity with Mr. Kent Webster. Thank you for watching the Retire As You Desire show. If you get a two-factor authentication message or email and you didn't do it, someone was trying to log into your Facebook or your bank account, how do you handle that? Welcome back to the Retire As You Desire show. In today's episode, we're talking about how to not fall for scams, not fall for phishing attempts for your bank accounts, your emails, and we have a cybersecurity expert, Mr. Kent Webster, showing us the way on how to protect our accounts. Now, there's one thing that's been super popular in our industry. It's called two-factor authentication. Why is this so important for you to have on your investment accounts, your bank accounts, your email, all your accounts essentially?
Yeah. I'm glad you asked that question. Two-factor is a way for both parties to confirm who the other is. So let's have a quick little demonstration here, okay?
Okay.
So, Bill, you're going to be my bank. I'm going to give you $20.
Okay.
And I want you to hold on to it for safekeeping.
So the bank's holding $20.
Yes. And as part of setting up an account with you, right, you need my information. So we need to have an official way to contact each other, right? So
we're going to connect.
Bam. You now have my info. I have your info, right? I have my credit card with your number on the back and so forth. But you have now a way to contact me.
And the bank is holding your money.
The bank's holding my money.
Okay.
Now some time has passed, and I come along with my user ID and password, basically a key, right? It's a key to the lock to my account saying, all right, I want to go in. So I go to you and I go, hey, here's my key. You look at your key, you look at the key and say, yep, that's the right key.
The right key.
But I want to make sure that you're the person who has the account. I want to make sure that I didn't lose the key outside and somebody else picked up.
Key.
Yes, and you want to confirm I'm Kent Webster that I'm giving it to you.
So the key correlates to your money in the bank.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm sure there's 1,000 different ways you can figure out who I am. I could give you a bunch of information. I can, do all those other things.
Social address, phone number, things
exactly.
Like that.
But we set up a communication method, right?
Right.
So you can pick up your phone.
Yeah.
You can give me a call, and you can say, "Hey, are you Kent Webster? Are you trying to access your account right now?"
Right.
And I go, "Yeah, that's me."
Or send you a text, right?
Well, that's what we're role playing here.
Yeah.
And then once I do that, you now know. First, I have the key, so I'm allowed to open the safe.
Okay.
2, I've confirmed that I'm the person who set that account up with you, and you can legitimately give me the money because I'm asking for it, and it's a legitimate ask.
And that's a way to have another level of security, basically from that standpoint.
Yeah, because in days past, you would just show up with the key, right? So before we set up two-factor, you just show up with the key, and the bank would be giving out the money to whoever shows up with the key.
And that's a username, password.
Usernames and passwords, but we found that those aren't the best way to secure things. And so having this second factor, that's why it's called two-factor, like the number 2 factor, 2 ways that we're confirming that it's the appropriate identity that's accessing the account, means that we're actually communicating with the right person for this account.
Got it. Well, if you get a two-factor authentication message or email and you didn't do it, let's say someone was trying to log into your Facebook or your bank account or whatever, how do you handle that? What do you do? Because it happens to me. It's like someone tried to get into your email or your Facebook or whatever it is. How do you handle that?
Yeah, so unfortunately, companies do their best to protect users' IDs and passwords. But if you use a user ID and password on another site that gets hacked, suddenly they might have that for you.
True.
You have your two-factor turned on, so the scammer logs into your financial institution with your stolen user ID and password. They trigger that two-factor, and you're sitting at dinner and you get that thing. You're like, I'm not trying to do this.
Right.
So it's okay to ignore it. It's okay because they will not complete the transaction unless you hit okay. So it's okay to ignore it. The better thing to do is to contact your financial institution. If immediately, that's great. If not, after the fact, and say, this wasn't me. And most likely what you need to then do is reset your password.
That's true. That's very smart.
Some organizations allow you to reset your username as well. That is the ideal, to reset your username and password, because that's why we have usernames and passwords. You need to have both things of information in order to access the account. Otherwise, somebody could sit there and just be typing passwords all day and get into whoever's account. You need both. And so, but not every organization allows that.
Now, this is something that's come to my mind as I was thinking about before having you on the show is, should you have a separate device, whether it's an iPad or a separate computer where you only do all your financial transactions on? Should you keep that off of your normal day-to-day phone?
No, you don't need to.
Okay.
You can do what's called air gapping. Air gapping is not even, meaning you're not even connected to the internet. You don't need to go to that extreme, but you need to be aware of a different kind of attack. That's a technical attack that we call man in the middle. So, right, when you are communicating to a bank, your information is not going straight from your laptop to that bank's network. It's going through a bunch of different things along the way. Okay. It's going through, like if you're sitting at Starbucks, it's going through the Starbucks network. Then it's going to the Starbucks internet service provider. Then it's going to the backhaul provider. Know that there's a lot of parties that are actually touching the data, the actual ones and zeros that are transmitting between your bank and you. So, It is possible that if you're out, you want to use a network that you're familiar with, that's hopefully controlled by you, that's secured. If you find a unsecured network out there in the world, try not to connect to it unless you really, really need to. Do not do it.
If you're in a Panera Bread or a Starbucks, you should not connect there.
Airports. I think airports are the biggest ones.
Terrible, right?
Where, because what scammers can do is show up to an airport with a device that looks like an internet Wi-Fi router. Say it's free Wi-Fi. You connect to it. Anything that goes then through that connection, they can grab. So if you browse YouTube or you browse Facebook, that's all the information they get. They don't really get a lot out of you. However, if you log into your banking app, they have your username and password.
Wow. Just like that.
Just like that, because they're capturing all the data that transfers over it. Now, there's other layers of security. There's ways to obfuscate the information that's getting across that. A VPN. So like if you do have to travel a lot or you do have to connect to a lot of different networks all over the place, highly recommend purchasing a VPN service and using that. But understand that VPN service is only protecting you from the network that your data is transmitting on. And usually that's your like last haul or your closest connection network. So what your device is connecting to is what usually a VPN will protect you from.
Okay. Now, what about traveling at hotels? When you have the Wi-Fi option, like I never use it. I don't use the hotel Wi-Fi. Is that something that you recommend people can use?
Again, you can. It's more of being aware of what you're doing when you're connected to a network you might not trust.
So don't put your social security in your computer while you're using.
Yeah, I mean, if you can, try not to be setting up like a brand new bank account or doing something that involves you submitting a lot of information.
Or apply for a credit card or
but
a
at the
mortgage
same time,
app.
if you're stuck and you have to, it's okay. But or try and use a cell service. So, right, if you want to control your own network, if you have to do something very sensitive and you're worried about the network you're on, pull out your cell phone, tether it, pay for the data yourself. You can trust your service provider to, make sure the information goes right. And that's one way you can deter a man in the middle kind of attack on you.
That's a good point.
Most places that are providing internet or Wi-Fi as a service, you can usually trust. But it's better to be careful, right? It's better to, and that's where you are. Pay attention to what you're doing on it. So,
and let's talk about your passwords.
Sure.
And your usernames. Now, let's just talk about the usernames first. Let's just talk about this for this section because I know we're going to jump into how to really protect your passwords in the next segment.
Well, before we talk about the actual passwords.
Yeah.
So I hear all the time, it's so difficult to come up with the 16 character, completely random password. And I like to propose the idea of tiering your passwords and tiering the level of security you put into them. So in the center, you have anything that allows you to authenticate to any financial institution or reset something. So that's usually your email, potentially your Google account or your Apple ID. Those passwords should be the most secure, should be the most difficult and longest, and they should have a unique username that you don't use anywhere else, ideally. A lot of us, including myself, set up my Apple ID a long time ago, and it is shared between a bunch of other stuff, and it's a little too late to change it.
Right.
Though I believe Apple just rolled out the feature where you can change what the primary email is, but I don't think it's username. Anyway, go check. Do my homework for me. Go check. Yeah. Go check. Maybe you can't choose your new username.
Let us know.
But so you want to protect anything that's like that. Anything that is a service, usually email, that allows you to prove your identity to somebody else. That's the thing you want to protect the most.
Okay.
So your second tier is your financial institutions. That anything that manages your money, those are on the second tier. So again, if the attacker gets your Gmail or your Apple account, they can reset all those passwords. But if they break into just one of those accounts, all they're getting access to is that one account.
Okay.
And there's protections in place that are provided by that financial institution. They will try and take care of you as a customer and do what they can. If it is something that is a technical attack, they're going to make it right because that's their business to make it right. And they have ways in place to make you whole. That doesn't mean it's easy. Doesn't mean it shows up tomorrow.
Right. It takes time.
It takes time sometimes, unfortunately, if you're the victim of an attack. But just know that you're not fully without recourse if just one account is captured. Yeah. All right. So outside of that, my third tier is anything that can bill you. So anything that you put a credit card into, like your favorite shopping site or your favorite, service provider, anything that has your credit card number, note that they're not storing your whole credit card number. They are storing really just the last 4 digits. That's the only thing that somebody can get out of there. But if somebody breaks into that account, they can actually use those 4 digits to kind of possibly prove who you are. They can go back to Google and they say, oh, my credit card is this. Most companies have moved away of using your last 4 digits as your credit card to prove who you are. But note that some might not have, and that's still potentially a piece of information somebody can use to reset your account. Hence why that's tier 3. That's not on the bottom, which is my tier 4, which is accounts that just have information on you. Something that can't financially, go with, financially have any impact on you. And those, you know what? If it's easier for you to have the same username, the same account, that's fine. Because if somebody breaks into them, what are they getting? They're getting your, access to your Netflix. They're getting access to, your message board and allowing to, put something up on a message board in your name. Yeah, that's okay, but it's not going to financially hurt you, which is really what we want to talk and want to make sure we want to protect yourself from. Oh. So I like going with this tiered method, and we'll talk about now like what level of password sophistication you need to have kind of at all those. We'll talk about that next.
So you heard it from Mr. Webster. We're going to talk about that next. Stay tuned to the Retire as You Desire show. Welcome back to the Retire as You Desire show. Today's episode is all about cybersecurity, and we're talking all about ways to stop scamming, stop phishing, and all these attacks. So I think we're going to wrap up today's show about passwords and a lot of ways to kind of protect your accounts as a whole here. So stick with us till the end. Now, there's something that when you sign up for a new account online, it could be clothing store, a bank, whatever the case may be, but they ask you to save your username and password. What's happening when you do something like this? It always confuses me. It makes me skeptical.
Got it. Okay.
Take us through this, please.
So there's 2 things going on. So first is usually when you get that asked, do I want to save this password? It is your local machine, the machine you're browsing the internet on, your actual computer, either the browser or the operating system. So if you're using Windows or Apple OS, it's asking, do you want me to save this to make it easier for you to log in the future?
Okay.
That's okay to do. They're using the built-in apps to store that information. It's not leaving the computer. It's staying on the computer. And it just makes it easier to log into those sites.
Okay.
Now, there's something else. Usually at the bottom, especially for more sensitive sites like financial institutions, there might be a checkbox that says, please remember this computer in the future.
Yes.
So what that box is when you click that, that's telling the website for the financial institution to send a cookie or some other kind of file type that actually gets stored in your browser. And that is a way for them to do 2-factor without actually having to send you a text message.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that little piece of code sits on your browser. And when you log in the future, 2 days down the road, you log back into that site, the website's looking for that piece of code. It has a unique number in there. It's comparing it to its unique number that it has for you. If it doesn't find it, it's going to make you go through the full authentication process. If it finds that number inside of your browser, it goes cool, and it lets you through, and you usually just have to type username and password. Okay. So it's an added layer of security. Now there are some downsides where usually that cookie comes with them tracking you a little bit. They want to know what websites you're going to. So as long as you're okay giving away a little bit of privacy, and even with certain browsers like Chrome going away from cookies, they're still doing the same thing. It's just called something different. But understand that that's kind of what that trade-off is. So if you want, the most secure thing is to not check that box and to go through the full login every time. But out of necessity, out of ease of use, it's okay. Check that box, take the cookie or take the new file that sits on your browser. But understand, if you open like a different browser, you're going to go through the full authentication process again.
Right.
The cookie does not transfer between browsers. So if you are an Apple user and you use Safari and then you switch over to Chrome, it's not going to have the information.
So you have to go through that process again.
Yeah. And also, let's go back to the passwords. So you don't just have to use the browser or the operating system to store your passwords. There are services out there that are applications that can be apps on your phone that you can put all your passwords into. They are great. What they allow you to do is make every single password, every single one of the online site that you go to, that super complex, unique username, absolutely random password.
Yep.
However, understand that you are putting it all in one box.
Right.
You're
So
putting
what
it all in one
happens?
spot.
Yeah.
So
That's the
you need to
scary
make
part.
sure, well, you need to make sure that your key to that box is even more complex and even more harder to put in. And that can be difficult. So that's the pluses and minuses of it. It makes it easier in your day-to-day going through your sites, and it auto fills in passwords, and also across devices. If you're somebody who is bouncing between a bunch of different devices, it's a way to make sure you have the same passwords across everything, and it gets rid of that headache of, hold on, I'm not at home. I know this password's like on my desk, or I know this password's like stored on my laptop, but I'm trying to access my phone. I don't remember it. And
That's a
and I
nightmare.
have to reset it. And it's annoying, and it's an annoyance. But like, so that's what that service can provide. A lot of them you have to pay for. In fact, I'd only trust ones that you have to pay for.
That
Anything
makes
that's
sense.
free, you take with a grain of salt. But again, a lot of like Apple right now is rolling out in built-in service in all their OSs that works on your iOS and works on your Mac as long as you have everything set up with the cloud. And so again, there's some configuration on the back end you have to do, which I encourage you to do the research for. Literally just Google, how do I set up passwords in Apple? Similar with Chrome. Chrome has things that allow you to transfer between Chrome on your phone. If you're using a device that uses Chrome, and then your laptop or other computer, there's services out there. Just Google how to set up that up, and you can do that. And again, those can make it easier to move around the web. But understand, you just like your email, you got to protect that password just as much as your email, because they can go in. They only need to break one password to get into everything.
That's the scary part. Well,
Yeah.
that's why it's probably like 34 characters long.
Yeah. Well, and so we're making this joke. Like, yes, you want to have passwords that are longer in length. It's always better to have something that's longer in length than more characters in it. So if you have a 4-character password, but it uses every possible character on a computer, that's actually less secure mathematically than a like 18-character passcode that only uses letters.
Let's go through an example.
Sure, we can go through an example. Well, so guidance for passwords before we go through the example.
Okay.
Guidance for passwords. You want to make sure you're using numbers, letters, capitals, and lowercase, and special characters. So those are everything that's, if you're looking at a normal keyboard, those characters that are above the numbers on the number row, you want to be using those as well. Now, it can be tough to just have to remember like a random series of letters and numbers and special characters, right? Like that's not all of us have your eidetic memory, all right? So what I like to recommend is actually thinking of a sentence. And so here's the example I have for you. So the sentence I have as a reminder is retire as you desire, right? So that's a nice sentence. It's actually 17 characters because you don't count spaces. So it meets our kind of complexity. It has a long list to it. So if you take a sentence like this, and then you do some replacement in it. So let's say I take a 3, or let's say I take an E and replace it with a 3. Let's say I take a T and replace it with a 7. Let's say I take an S, replace it with a $sign. Let's say I take an I and I replace it with the multiplication sign. I can come up with a complex passcode that is easy to remember, right? Retire as you desire. And
That's brilliant.
Yeah. So if you don't want to spend the money to use a password manager, at least be doing this with your passwords.
And this is a really great way to try and protect against just you writing out retire as you desire with a capital R.
Oh, yeah.
It's a big no-no.
Absolutely. Doing a number, sentence, and a special character is like the worst you can do. And you think, oh, there's all those characters in there. But the thing is, you want some randomness in where things are in which digit in your password. Because people have shown over time... Unfortunately, password 123 is still one of the most common passwords.
No way.
Absolutely, because people are lazy and they want to. What can I do? Remember, I'm going to do a word. So password, capital P 123 is still one of the most found passwords out there, and we know this. So it's weird. We know this because there are organizations that will, So if somebody hacks into a database, they take that database and they start selling it to all the nefarious actors who use it to try and break into sites. Usually there's somebody who's in the security space that buys a copy of it and then puts it up so that everybody gets access to it, because information is important. Information, sharing is how we can better protect ourselves. Now, that the person who's posting that, understand that they're doing it because they're trying to, show off to our little community. They're trying to, gain experience. They're trying to become, they're doing their own marketing to build their own career in the security
Right.
space. And this is how we do it in the security space is we publicly, show, hey, I figured this out. I found this, and I'm going to share what I found with the entire world.
Wow.
So you can kind of trust, usually you understand that there's still some motivation for an individual to do these things that helps them, but understand that the service they provide is something you can trust. So there are sites out there that you can check your password, you can check your user account against all of the major hacks that have happened. That site it's those sites, because there's more than one, get regularly posted. And actually, it's something I just noticed in my Apple browsing is not Chrome, but Safari now will let me know if one of my passwords, which one of them did, it showed up in one of those databases and says, hey, you might want to think about changing it.
When you're dealing with money in your financial institutions, whether it's your advisor or your accountant, you could also set up a keyword or a key phrase that only you and your spouse know, something like that. So when you do have a request to receive money, you can call them and say, hi, Tom and Susie, what's your key phrase, right? You could use these things to add another layer of just security from a confidence standpoint in these relationships. I mean, you can think of these things and it's not out of the question.
Absolutely, especially with the potential threats that are on the horizon with AI and the fact that, AI can impersonate somebody's voice or impersonate somebody over video. Yes, to have that kind of almost spycraft key setup,
right? Exactly.
Where you say, all right, if I'm, I need to say thistle, that's my word to let you to, communicate money on my behalf. That's very important. I mean, back from my consulting days, one of the funniest stories I remember was, an attacker got into a company's email, was impersonating the CFO, and was sending emails was impersonating the CEO and was sending emails from the CEO to the CFO saying, you need to wire $250,000 to this bank account for this thing, and it's an emergency. Please go do it. And the only reason they didn't do it was they both happened to be at a conference and standing in line at Starbucks. And the CFO turned around to the CEO and said, what's this email about?
Wow.
What did you want me to do? I know there's people that are going to the point of, especially like social media stars, people that are, have huge targets on their back, are to the point of they will not do a transaction unless they show up physically in a bank.
Yep.
And physically sit down with a teller and say, this is the only way you're allowed to move my money. There's people that are at that extreme already to make sure they don't get attacked.
And rightfully so.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's the world we kind of live in. And so I'm not saying you need to go to that level. I want to make you aware of it so that you can choose how your own risk tolerance and figure out where you need to be and what efforts you need to take to protect yourself.
This has been one of my favorite episodes by far. The whole point of the show is to give great information, great feedback, and really show you ways to enlighten your financial livelihood. And Kent did a great job of that today. So thank you for watching the Retire As You Desire show. Please tune in every Friday night, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time for more great episodes just like this.